Buy whatever.
That's a good way to start it off.
It's school.
I don't care about
Actually,
your kids.
college is a ripoff. You shouldn't go to college. Don't do it. Just spend all your money on gaming hardware, and it'll be a much better investment for you.
Okay, there we go. And that's the show. That was it right
Yes.
there. That was your recommendations about
Yes.
what people should do in college. Okay.
Yeah. Unless
right.
you can get an esports scholarship, in which case.
That's true. That's a thing now. Do you regret the
ride
fact that
that.
esports weren't as popular when you were in school?
No, I'm not good enough at video games.
Oh, you really?
I love video
You don't
games,
think you would
but
have gone
I'm
for it?
not good enough competitively at like any of the games that make money, so
Okay.
I wouldn't even bother.
Matt, would you have gone for an esports scholarship?
Well, if I really wanted to,
Yeah.
easily could have gotten in as an esports scholarship. It would have been no problem.
Coach would have just put me in. All right, let's just go live here. Hello, this is Close to the Metal. This is our computing podcast where we go in depth with different computing topics every week, and we're live on Facebook and YouTube right now. So thanks a lot if you're tuning in live. And we've got some specific things that we're going to be talking about today having to do with going back to school. College age especially, what you need to look for in a PC or a laptop. What are the most important features that you think are needed? And that's where we want to kind of get some feedback and hear what you think about that. Like specifically, that's the question we're starting off with, is what features are most important in a back-to-school PC? So go ahead and list those off and let us know. And we've got a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about associated with it. We'll go through some of the ones that these two guys have picked, and then kind of talk about what hardware is needed, what the important things are to consider when you're buying a new PC or a laptop, or that's the thing, you have so many options now, laptop or a tablet. And we'll go through all of that. But let's introduce our cast right now. I'm Greg Nibbler, and to my right,
Brad Burke.
it is Brad Burke and
Matt Smith.
Matt Smith. All right, guys. So we were talking about this. Brad, you instantly said, I think, something about that a gaming laptop is what they should buy, but I don't know.
Well, okay.
So maybe we should go into this here for a second. What did you have in college?
In college, I had an Alienware 15, which I very much enjoyed because it was really good at playing games. And I play a lot of video games in college, and I still play a lot of video games, so it kind of worked out for me.
Yeah.
That I had something I could use that I could also take to the library, if I needed to, but it definitely couldn't really come to class with me all the time. That was sort of an issue. I think if I were to do it now, I would probably pick up something like the XPS 15.
XPS 15?
Because it has, you can still get it with a discrete GPU, even though it's a low-end one. So if you still want to get in a little bit of gaming, you can. But it actually has good battery life and usable features, and you can put it in a backpack without hurting yourself. So
Okay, without hurting yourself.
yeah, I had an extra big backpack to fit in this 3-inch thick computer.
Yeah,
So
you
were
gotta
that
do
guy
it.
that,
If you got
like-
one of the big gaming
Yeah, it's
laptops.
just
what it is.
You need a specific gaming, backpack,
Yeah.
which might be a problem depending on your crowd. I don't know, what sort of image you're wanting to give off.
yeah.
Some
That's true.
people
I
can
mean,
just roll with it, and it's totally fine. But the gaming backpack isn't always the best look.
Right.
So this is something to be aware of.
I can picture Brad coming in there, with just this giant laptop, setting it down onto the table. Yeah, I'm being that guy.
Yeah.
So known everybody in the class, like a giant fan running throughout it.
Well, and then the thing is that you sit down with this giant laptop, and the first thing you do is start trying to find a place to plug it in. You just immediately reach into your bag and I gotta sit.
Can
by the
I
edge
can I
here.
get behind?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of and especially in the library, you're always looking for I'm gonna get that little cubby over there with the plug in it, 2 plugs, so I can charge my phone too.
Yep.
Yeah, it was kind of a pain.
Yeah, and just be that guy.
Yep.
Okay, well, so that's one option. That's one option, going with the giant gaming laptop. But deciding not to do that, let's take a look. And we do have some more comments coming in here of people of what they're looking for in a PC or a laptop for back to school issues. And I've got some questions that are coming
Well,
through
can we talk about what I had? I don't
let's
know why
get
we
in.
just get to talk about what Brad had.
Let's get into. Well, this is
Because
fair and balanced.
because there's a little. We did not discuss this beforehand
Okay.
about what we would pick right now. So I had a Lenovo T42. So I was far more workmanlike.
Yes. You were efficient.
I had a
You were
tank
going
of
for
a
the
laptop.
efficient.
Yeah. And it did not play games, but it did do all the school stuff very well and had a great keyboard. So I loved it for that. Now, we didn't discuss what we would pick right now before the podcast, but I also would pick the Dell XPS 15.
Okay, so you're on the same page.
Yeah,
on that one.
which is
Okay.
unfortunate because I was hoping we were going to have a really big argument about this.
As was I.
And I could tell Brad that he was wrong and that the laptop he picked was horrible. That'd make for some great podcasting, but unfortunately, we agree.
Okay.
But that should tell you that the Dell XPS 15 is a pretty good choice.
That would be a solid
And-
one. Now, why is it? Why would you pick that?
Right. So thinking about like some features of that particular laptop, it's got a big screen, a 15-inch screen, but it's not a particularly large or heavy laptop. It's got a good enough battery for most people. 5 hours and pretty heavy use should be expected. And you could easily extend that to 8 or 10 if you're doing really light use.
Okay.
It's got a good keyboard, not amazing, but it's pretty good. It's got a good touchpad, again, not amazing, but definitely will get the job done. And I think a key point for us in particular is that it has the option of NVIDIA GTX 1050 graphics, which means that you can actually use it to play games.
Which is the most important part, obviously.
Yes.
Of this, is that ultimately, so you can play games while you're pretending to be paying attention in class.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is like a point for it, and increasingly, like so many people play games now, right? Like, I would guess that by far the majority of incoming college students play some sort of video game, more than those who do not.
I would say, that's probably
so
pretty standard.
your 1050 is like a really good card that's not going to, it doesn't make it a heavy laptop or a thick laptop or take a lot of battery life off of it, but it'll play most games at 1080p. And the XPS 15 also, we talk about price because that's going to be important if you're a student.
Mm-hmm.
You can really strip it down and get it with that 1050 for $1,050, or you could upgrade it a little bit more, get a quad-core processor for $1,350.
And that's something that's going to last for a while.
Which is still expensive,
right.
but like it's probably, I would say that's more like mid-range for a student laptop, just because students are usually buying it with the intent of like, that's going to be their life right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is their life on a computer.
Yeah.
You're going to do everything on that thing. So, and you're going to do that for, the next 4, to maybe more years, depending on how things go for you. So, it should be a pretty good one.
Should be solid for that. Now, I'm seeing a couple of things, some of the comments coming through, and again, we're talking about PCs or laptops or whatever kind of computer you would want for going back to school. What features are important? USB coffee warmer is one of them that Damo says. That would be, I can see how that would matter. Mawuli says, very lightweight PC with very minimalist space, no gaming stuff, just really good battery power would be very important. Would you say that's good with the Dell XPS 15?
If you're looking for something like that, then the Dell XPS 13 is a good choice. We always recommend that one as our top Windows 10 laptop. But actually, there's a huge amount of options for that right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you want something that's just thin, light, good battery life, there's so many computers that do that. Some of the ones we've rated highly recently have been the Huawei MateBook X.
Mm-hmm.
That's starts at $1,000, extremely thin and light, small laptop. If you want to go something that's a little bit more affordable, the Asus ZenBook UX330UA is a good one. That's like $750. Sometimes you can get it on sale for $700.
See, I think that's good to know because we were talking about the Dell XPS, and that's over $1,000 just for the basic one. But this is something you could get for a more reasonable.
And that's again, not gaming. You're not going to do really. Although, fortunately, today's video games are a little bit easier to run on the low end. So if you just want to play some 2D games, of which there are now many, that wasn't really the case when I was in college.
Right.
If you want to play indie games or whatnot, that's going to be fine for that.
Okay.
But that's a really good laptop. That Asus, it's got a good battery life. It's powerful enough. Nice screen, which is not. It's also got an anti-glare coating, so you can, you're not going to be sitting there in the library with the sun behind you, I can't see anything.
Yeah.
Which can actually be a pretty big annoyance when you're in college. So.
So we're talking about that. We've got some questions coming into, and this is actually one I think that we're going to talk about. Is what about a Samsung? As far as a computer from Samsung, and we wanted to get into some of the tablet side of it. But I don't know what do you think about this? I can see by the look on your face, Matt, that already you're upset by this or questioning something when it comes to the Samsung.
I don't think you're as into the idea of Chromebooks as I am.
Oh,
because
the Chromebooks.
we were talking about the Chromebook.
Samsung Chromebook Pro.
would be I think those are a really good option for students because a lot of things you do they're web-based, they're writing-based if you're using Google Docs or OneDrive or things like that. You don't necessarily need all that heavy lifting. But I will say, the Samsung Chromebook Pro is kind of expensive at like $500, $600, $700. Yeah. So like one of the real draws for me about a Chromebook is that it's, I have one, it's a Dell Chromebook 11, older one, with an i3, and it was like a $250 Chromebook. It was very cheap. And it just works great. It's it's like I like to think of it as like the Swiss Army knife of laptops because no, it's not going to do everything, but like in a pinch, it's going to work. It'll get the job done.
It'll do a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Nice thing again, like you're on a college campus or whatever. Wi-Fi is plentiful, so you're always online. You never need to worry about that. It works pretty well offline now, but you have that now. You have Android apps coming in, so you can do that with some touchpad interaction stuff. Better if you spend more and get a touchscreen there.
Yeah.
But they're a really good option. But I think one of the draw there is to spend as little as possible.
Yeah.
So
the Samsung one is definitely on the higher end, and for students, I feel like it might be maybe not the best idea. I feel like if you're going to get a Chromebook, you don't want to pay a lot for it because you want to have the option to do something else. Maybe get a tablet, or I don't know.
Or maybe you get a Chromebook and then you have a gaming desktop.
You could have a
your
desktop
home.
PC, if you wanted to. Now, as far as Chromebooks go, I would recommend the Acer Aspire 50, or I actually don't know if it's an Aspire, but it's the 15-inch Chromebook. I think they call it the Acer Chromebook 15. And that starts around $300, goes up to about $500, but you're going to be getting a 1080p display on most of those models, and make sure you buy one that does have the 1080p display, and you can get some fast processors in that, and it's a really nice all-around laptop.
Get 4 gigs of RAM too.
Yeah.
That you can get 2, 4, sometimes 8, but definitely get at least 4.
I would check before you buy any Chromebook with what your college's like software policies are, because or your particular coursework.
Yeah.
Because there's a possibility they might have something there that's like Windows and Mac apps. I don't think it's going to be that common these days, but hey, like it's definitely a possibility. Chrome OS is its own thing, and
so check before you.
Colleges might not be anticipating that if they have some specific programs that need to be installed for coursework. So do watch out for that.
So again, talking about what you would pick for a back-to-school PC, and that these guys recommended the Dell XPS 15 for number one, but then talking about the Samsung Chromebook Pro. I do see some other comments that are coming in here, and again, we're live on Facebook and YouTube, so drop in your comments or questions wherever you got. Christopher says, definitely have to say something powerful enough to avoid lagging when procrastinating by viewing websites that have ads and use Flash Player plugin. That is important. If you are procrastinating, you do need something strong enough you can switch back and forth so that nobody can see what it is that you're doing. Yeah. So this is a good factor that we need to add in there. So
I think as far as the performance goes,
some good RAM.
I mean, like as far as performance goes, that's a good just to talk about like what you should look for as far as performance goes. And I would say that for a general base level, like pretty much anything is going to work. As long as it's like not the $200 laptops that have like an Intel Atom processor or one of the really old or really low power AMD like Jaguar based or whatever the most modern version of that is.
Okay.
So watch out for those really like inexpensive laptops. You usually pick them out because they'll be like a $200 or $300 laptop with like a quad core processor. And it'll look like a great deal, and that's when you know something's probably too good to be true.
Something's off there. Okay.
So yeah, like any dual core Intel Core i3 is going to be totally fine for most of your use. Otherwise, I begin to say look out for what you might need to do for your specific major.
Yeah.
I mean, for
field.
most people, it's not going to be anything, but I guess if you were like doing a certain kind of research and you had to run an application that
or design
requires a lot of processor use, you might want a quad core, stuff like that. So definitely that is important. To factor in what it is that you're going to be using it for. But generally speaking, and if at all possible, get a solid state hard drive. That's like
that's another important factor.
That's the biggest day-to-day factor because mechanical hard disks, they feel really slow these days because it actually takes time for that little read-write head in the disk to go find whatever you ask for. and you're not going to be keen on that anymore. Like, people don't like that anymore. You've been using a smartphone for a while, and it doesn't do that. You want instant response, and that means you need a solid-state hard drive. Fortunately, laptops like that Asus I talked about, that has one. The Acer Swift 3, which is like 650, has one. There's a lot of cheap laptops now that have solid-state hard drives.
So look for a solid state.
Yeah, and I think kind of companies kind of came around there too on the solid state drives, because for a while they were really like pushing out cheap laptops without them, and sort of being like, get this, like, that $250 laptop with an i3, and it's like, wow, how'd you do that? And you get it home, and it's like, this thing is so slow, and it's like, there's nothing wrong with it if you were to replace the hard drive. And that just, people who don't know what they're doing, don't know what they're looking for, it makes them mad. It makes them like, what's wrong with this computer I just bought? It's brand new. And it really feels that way nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like probably 90% of the people who get a computer are like, oh, it's so full of bloatware, that's why it's slow. The problem is actually probably the hard drive.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. And that is a really important factor. Solid state hard drive. Get that.
Yeah.
If you, whatever you're buying. Battery life, I guess that just kind of depends on where we go. Like, what other main factors, before we move on here, we're going to talk about the MacBook side of it as well, but what other main factors should people look at? Screen size?
Well, okay, get a 1080p screen.
1080p screen.
Whether you want a 13-inch or a 15-inch.
Okay.
That's really up to you and how big a laptop you want to carry around.
Okay. But get 1080p.
Yeah.
Get solid state.
Yeah. 4 gigs of RAM.
4 gigs of RAM.
You're pretty much going to get that on most laptops these days.
Okay.
I would try and get, a couple USB ports at least. There's some laptops that don't have that anymore. And just be aware that if you get a laptop that doesn't have at least a couple USB ports, you're going to be carrying around some dongles, which might annoy you.
Which is very annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just be careful about that. I think that pretty much covers most of it. Oh, and one other minor point, which actually might be relevant to college students, is some laptops are now putting the webcam at the bottom of the screen, and like the Dell XPS.
Really?
13.
I didn't know that. Why?
Because the bezels are so small they can't fit it above the screen. And some people
So it's
don't
just
like
a lot
that.
of terrible angled shots
Right,
of people.
right.
Exactly.
And I feel like
That's the worst
people
angle
who are
ever.
in college tend to do a lot of video chat, I think.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people. You have people back home
When
you
you-
want to talk to.
And let alone meetings or conference. I mean, that's kind of true for everything.
So watch out for that if
Yeah.
that's something you care about.
That just seems really strange to me that they would stick it down there.
Yeah. It never bothers me, but
Yeah.
some people hate it. Like,
Nobody likes a
with
shot from that
passion.
angle. That's not. Nobody looks good
so-
that way. Okay, well, so those are very important things. Now, what about going for a MacBook Pro? What if you went up to that? Do you think that's a good idea for a college computer? Or is that overkill? Brad, what do you think about this?
I don't want a MacBook.
The look on your face pretty much
I
says
wouldn't
it right
recommend
there.
anyone buy a MacBook.
No, sir, I
wouldn't.
don't like it.
Nope.
Yeah,
Well,
not one
we-
bit.
I mean, I think there are some issues there as far as students go. The first one being price, that there's a price barrier there that is.
Okay. Yes. And let's just say me and Brad can agree on this 100%. Do not buy a MacBook Air.
Okay.
Definitely not.
Don't do it.
Oh, no.
Please. Be good to yourself. Be good to yourself. Don't buy a MacBook Air. Okay? It's not particularly thin anymore.
Yep.
It's not fast.
Okay.
I mean, it's fast enough for most things, but it's not fast for its price. It has a really bad screen. Like, it's
Hey
not
kids,
a good laptop.
Matt here. Let's get serious for a
Yeah.
minute. All right, yeah.
Don't buy that laptop, okay?
Okay.
So, let's just start there with the MacBook. Now, MacBook Pro. You still wouldn't do it, Brad, for MacBook Pro?
I mean, if I had a lot of money to throw at the thing, maybe. I just think that's a huge amount of money for a system that's going to be, in a lot of ways, not as versatile as a Windows machine is right now, where, for you're saying, between $1,100 and $1,300, you're getting a well-equipped Dell XPS 15, and that's where we're just starting out on the MacBook Pros, and then you get up there and things like, there's all this weird stuff like dongles. You're going to be carrying dongles, and you're going to be carrying a lot of them because students need to actually plug into things. If you got to do a presentation in front of the class, well, now you've got to find your, Lightning to or Thunderbolt 3 to HDMI dongle, and I need to plug in a mouse. Well, now I need my USB-A dongle, and that's just not something that I think is really appealing. And the battery life was used to be a really big thing for MacBook Pros. and it's just not anymore. It's not something where it's the shining example of look how long this battery can last. You can take it everywhere without a charger. Who cares?
So it's not going
Those
to
days
matter
are
then.
gone.
That's not, it doesn't matter.
And there's weird stuff too, like for the LSATs. If you're using a MacBook Pro, you have to like disable the touch bar, which is like it's
So you can't
all this.
cheat?
Yeah,
That's
like there's
hilarious.
all this stuff.
Yeah, okay.
There's just all these things that like.
God, of all the ways
Plus,
you can cheat
plus
now.
you can't play games on it. Where are you going to play your games? Are you going to spend all your money on a not well equipped MacBook Pro, and then you're going to get home and and you're going to play like Peggle?
Yeah, I would agree with pretty much all that. So people always talk about Apple tax. Oh, Apple products are so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, sometimes that's really true and sometimes not. I think the iMac, for instance, is not really that expensive for what it is.
Yeah.
But the MacBook right now is very expensive for what it is.
Right.
And
we've had entire episodes of this
Yeah.
show dedicated to that. About how
yeah,
expensive
so
it
it's
is.
definitely a tough one to recommend. Now, there are going to be some people out there who are dedicated to Mac OS for whatever reason. These wayward souls
There's just
have
no help for some
decided
people.
that they really want to use Mac OS. Cool. Well, if you want to use Mac OS, then I would recommend you just buy the basic MacBook Pro 13 without the touch bar. I think that's $1,300 now. If I recall right, they did a price drop, I think, on the last WWDC. So, that's a reasonably quick system. It does have a really nice display. The ports are kind of bad, but I mean, like, if you're going to get into just that Mac OS experience, that's your base level. That's probably where you want to be.
That's where you want to be
You
at.
do not want the MacBook Air. You
Okay.
want to buy this one. Because
Okay.
it's going to be way better.
So again,
and just about every
do you
way.
buy the MacBook Air? I can't remember what you said.
No. I would
okay.
say no.
That was a no.
Yeah.
That was a no on the MacBook Air. Okay, so there we go. So that's the one you should go with. MacBook Pro without the touch bar.
I just
The
need to get a
13-inch.
T-shirt.
Yeah.
It
To wear
says-
the podcast every week.
That just says has
Don't
a
buy a
MacBook Air on it with a
MacBook
X'd out. All right. Well, let's talk about just on a side thing of this. And again, if you're tuning in, we're talking about what features you would look for in a PC or a computer for going back to school, and what kind of things you look for, what you would like. And these guys are giving their recommendations. What about hardware? What other additional what hardware should you be looking for when you go back to school? I mean, I know we didn't get into that earlier, but.
I would say good mouse. I always like
Solid
having a
mouse?
Like when you have
Yeah.
to do, if you have to do any sort of like spreadsheet work or numbers work, editing, just like not having to use the touchpad all the time.
Yeah.
It can kind of save your wrists a
Yeah.
bit. It's a nice thing to have.
I mean, if you're thinking about like what your setup's going to be in your, in a dorm room or an apartment, most people do go for laptops, and
Yeah.
I think that's fine. But you might want to have, depending on what your budget is, what you have left over, try and build yourself a little station at your desk. It might be cool to get both a mouse and a keyboard. If you decide to do one of those things where like the laptop stands that sort of hold it up and it turns the laptop into more just a display, which
Right.
can be more ergonomic if you're working for long hours, which you very well might be. And even like an external monitor could be nice if you can afford it. Monitors are pretty cheap these days. You can get, a nice 27-inch monitor for, you can get a 27-inch monitor for like $200, $250. It's not going to be great, but, it's better to watch movies on that than on your 15-inch screen. So,
Right.
That can be really nice.
So that's another factor to bring in there.
I mean, for the dorm room experience, that's like having a 65-inch, HD TV mounted on your wall at that point. So definitely can be a nice investment.
I want to get to a couple of questions that are coming through here. So if you do have questions to ask them, please drop those in. Michael's asking, will you guys share your opinions on active pens and 2-in-1s?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to go?
Brad, I know
think
you're a
they're-
fan of the 2-in-1s.
Yeah, I think 2-in-1s are becoming an increasingly good option. Like when I started reviewing PCs, it was like these awful unergonomic machines that didn't run well and they'd fall over and all this crap. But I use been using the Surface Book for quite a while, and despite its kind of firmware oddities, I really like the option of being able to just touch something on the screen real quick, or take down some notes. I think I would have really appreciated having that during class, especially being able to just flip the thing down and just sit there and take notes on it like a clipboard.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of value there to a student, maybe more than anybody, because there is a lot of just listening and talking and trying to remember what people said rather than, you know, necessarily spending all your time sitting there. Because I do think that sometimes the sacrifice is not a great keyboard and touchpad experience. That can kind of suffer if you're getting really convertible or detachable. So,
Yeah.
although the Surface Book defies that, but it's also way too expensive to be a Surface
Yeah.
Pro. Maybe, you know, could be a good
Yeah,
option.
I'm glad that question was brought up because 2-in-1s are definitely an option now. And I do think that like a Surface Pro has like it fits into the student life pretty well in some respects. I've used the active stylus a lot. It's great. It's really nice to actually take notes on it, and you can definitely use it for that. And you know, you can do it in OneNote or whatever, sync it to the cloud, come back to it later, and because of that, you don't have to be restricted to just like at a desk. So you think about like one of the disadvantages of doing notes on your laptop is that you do have to be sitting down and sort of at the desk, like a classroom, and maybe that's not always possible depending on what you're doing for your coursework. You know, sometimes you might be up and about, you know, walking around. The only problem with that is, first of all, a lot of the good 2-in-1s are still really expensive. And the good 2-in-1s still require some trade-offs in terms of how fast they are for certain things. Now, the Surface Pro can be very quick, but by the time you're getting to like super quick on that one, you're talking like $2,500.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of defeated the purpose a lot.
You know, and also like most of them, no matter the configurations, aren't going to play any games of any sort that are 3D. So that's going to put it out for a lot of people. So you know, you just kind of have to you kind of have to be very aware of what you're going to be doing. Could work, but you know, be careful before you put the money down.
Also, like you were saying with moving around and stuff, I will say that the Surface Pro, you can't really use it on your lap that well, can you?
No, and that's
So
that's
like
that's
if
also an
you're
issue
at
with
a
a lot
table,
of
that's
2-in-1s.
fine. Yeah, like I think you're probably more likely if you're trying to go the 2-in-1 route to find a good 360-degree convertible, because that tends to be a bit easier to pull off, where they're just throwing a different hinge on a system with a touchscreen. But yeah,
The HP Spectre X360 is a good one for that, and it's
Yeah.
not that expensive. However, on the flip side, again, there are trade-offs here. That's a 13-inch system, so that's going to feel pretty big when you're like walking around with it. It's not really very
Right.
comfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's why these systems tend to work out more for professional use than student use a lot of times, because if it's professional use, you don't really care about the games or the size of the screen, and the cost isn't as much of an issue.
Yeah, it's
either.
not going to be what you're using for everything. It's
Yeah. Whereas students are going to use it for everything. That tends to make the 2-in-1 a little less appealing.
And there's lots of great reviews on the 2-in-1s too at digitaltrends.com. Just I want to get through a couple more of these comments here before we wrap up. Talking about the monitors, Christopher says, not trying to be a cheapskate, but you can go to Goodwill and get $15 on half price Saturdays for 1080p and 1440p.
Yeah,
so
totally.
That's another option, especially for a college kid. Wendy says, buy an HDMI-enabled 24-inch TV, can plug the desktop or the laptop into that as a monitor. Add a Roku, you have your entertainment there too.
You know, I think I would probably say, do you think that's a lot cheaper?
Not really.
Because I would think a monitor, you know, just going back and forth between them a lot, I would say that a monitor is going to have generally better response times and better input connections, like better connectivity options on the back of it.
Than buying a television.
But I think it does sort of depend what you're doing with it. Like if you have somewhere to put, you can get cheap TVs bigger than 27 inches, I would imagine. You know, I haven't looked into it too much, but
my preference would be to get a monitor and use it as a TV.
Yeah.
Rather than get a TV and use it as a monitor.
especially if you have a computer hooked up to it, it doesn't seem like you need a Roku really.
I guess it just, you know, it would depend on what you're going to use a display for mostly.
Okay.
You might be using it mostly for a TV in that case. Maybe TV makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
that's true. Cody's asking for your thoughts on the Samsung DeX Station as far as for college.
Oh, what does that one do?
I believe that is, and I'm trying to remember myself
heard of it
exactly.
before.
Yeah, it's for the Galaxy S8.
Right, we
So
did a
it's,
review on that.
Oh,
a
it lets you
little
like
bit
plug
ago.
Yeah.
in keyboard and mouse and stuff.
Yeah,
On an Android desktop.
Yeah, so no, I would not recommend that
Yep.
under any circumstances.
So that's a hard pass on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like trying to use your smartphone as a system is, it's not going to be very quick.
Yeah.
Even when we checked out Remix OS, that was like a project that sort of tried to make a desktop out of Android, and there were it worked well in mechanically, but there were definitely some issues that you wouldn't run into even with a Chromebook in terms of accessing the right apps, being able to use the apps correctly, being able to interface with the web becomes kind of tricky because it's not immediately requesting desktop sites, and it gets kind of messy there.
Basically, it's just too much in its infancy.
And then your phone's always tied up to like you.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can't have
That's a real annoyance. With like the smartphone docking idea is like, well, you think about how you use your smartphone, like you're sitting there at like a computer and you have your smartphone here, probably like look at a notification. You're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna look at this thing real quick. You can't do that if it's like hooked up with a bunch of wires to, a screen. So yeah, I wouldn't really
recommend against that one.
Yeah.
Well, just to kind of wrap it up here for today, like, is there any? Have you changed your mind at all? I guess about the Dell XPS 15. Is that still exactly what you would buy? Like, because you both had the same recommendation at the beginning as far as which one. So I don't know if I'm going to get an argument out of you two or not, but
I think still, the only thing that sort of after teasing this out, because I do like the Chromebooks, I could see a lot of value in a cheap, lightweight Chromebook combined with a heavy-duty desktop if you needed to do more of that. I know people are more into in college or into streaming and into doing video and things like that. So if you wanted something where you're not going to be able to do that really well on an XPS. But if you had, that could be a good option too. That would be maybe even less the price if you spent, $200 on a Chromebook and $800 on a desktop. That could be a good combo.
Just knock out both with one.
Yeah, and then you can throw it in your bag, take it with you, and everything's in the cloud. So you sit down at your desktop, and all your Google Docs are already there, and your your Trello's all good, and your email's there, and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I would say with the Dell XPS 15 for most cases. If it is too expensive, the Asus ZenBook UX330 UA that I mentioned is a really good pick. If that's even too expensive, then you could try for a Chromebook, or I think the Acer Aspire 15 line is pretty good for what it is. Just make sure you get a 1080p display, solid state drive, and the just like a Core i3 processor.
Core i3,
and I believe you can find those in one of those systems for like $550, $600.
Okay, so definitely.
I was looking at those a few months ago, and there's some pretty outrageous deals on the hardware. So, hey, like it's not going to have a great battery life or be particularly portable, but sometimes you're a student, you're on a budget,
right?
And you just need something that
you
works.
Can sacrifice that side for the other side of it. So yeah, definitely some options to consider when you go into it, but some good recommendations. And you can check out reviews of all of these at digitaltrends.com as well for everything that we've talked about today. And I'm assuming there's going to be some more recommendations going forward for back to school stuff that are showing up on the website. I think there's one at the top of the page right now.
I was going to say, I believe we have something up right now.
Yeah, so
the best back to school gadgets.
Check out all that at digitaltrends.com. And this is Close to the Metal. So this is our computing podcast live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube, and then up as a podcast everywhere else where you get those all your audio podcasts. Wherever you go, we are there. So please find that and subscribe to it, and check out all the back issues. If there's anything specifically we've talked about today, there's a good chance we've done a show about it. Then you can go in and listen to that and get more in-depth information on it. Or like we said, just always go to the website, send us an email, podcast@digitaltrends.com. And thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode.